The pre-trip inspection checklist is a critical step that allows you to catch any issues before heading out on the road. Not only that you as a driver are required to complete and document the results of your finding, but when done properly, it can prevent accidents, increase safety, limit breakdowns, and make your deliveries on time, which ultimately means more money. If not done properly, it may risk in a ticket, which will cost you money, not the company, or worse, put your truck out of service, and then nobody will make any money. So I'm gonna run through with you the ways I've learned how to complete a thorough pre-trip without having any mechanical experiences. In reality, a pre-trip should take you no longer about 15 minutes to complete before you head out on the road. But when you take the test, the examiner will give you approximately 60 minutes or so to complete the test from beginning to end. And that's because when you're out on the field doing your pre-trip, you're just pretty much scanning for anything that seems to be out of place. But during the test, you are documenting your findings verbally to your instructor, which easily can take longer. What would normally take you about 15 minutes to complete is now gonna take about an hour. So before we begin, I don't want you feeling overwhelmed, because the school is probably gonna give you a packet that's gonna have several pages for you to memorize. I don't want you to feel like you have to memorize word for word that entire packet. But instead, I want you to ask yourself, what is it really asking from me? Like, when it's time for us to open up the hood, what is that packet that you're handed asking you to inspect? If something is out of place, what are you gonna do to address it? Or how can you determine if a component is in working order? Because that's what you're gonna have to do on the field anyway. One last thing, the pre-trip will have quite a few critical failures just by not saying keywords. So I'm gonna indicate each of those keywords every time I mention it on the screen for you guys. Make sure to take notes. Also, here are some catchphrases you should probably also write down to help remember how to describe certain components on a truck. PMS. Is it properly mounted and secured? ABC. Abrasions, bulges, and cuts. LLL. Lights, leaning, and leaks. Note that leaks doesn't necessarily have to be anything like fluid. It can also be an audible leak, like an air leak. ICD. Inflation, condition, and depth. All right, so now let's begin.
So you're walking up to the vehicle and you're looking for anything that might stand out to you. I'm gonna start with lights, leaning, and leak. We'll take a look at the reflectors. Make sure they're clean, not missing or broken. And are they in the right color? Red in the rear, amber everywhere else. Easy way to remember that is R and R. Red for rear. Check that all lights, left, right, four ways, headlights, high beams, clearance lights, clean, not missing or broken, and again, in the right color. And check for leaks, any fluids dripping on the ground or puddles underneath the engine and transmission area. Then you want to check the vehicle for leaning toward one side or another, possibly indicating poor suspension. Now that we popped the hood, we're looking for the overall condition in the right side of the engine compartment. Note, make sure to practice and learn where each of the components are located on the vehicle you are testing, as they can be in different locations depending on the manufacturer. You want to check all the hoses for leaks and for proper condition. Check all wires for proper conditions and make sure they're fastened properly. This would be a good opportunity to check the ground for any leaks or puddles and locate where it's coming from. You want to check the alternator is properly mounted and secured. The wires are also securely mounted. It is belt driven. The belt is not frayed, torn, or cracked, and has no more than 3/4 of play. The water pump is properly mounted and secured and isn't loose or leaking. It is also belt driven. The belt is not frayed, torn, or cracked, and has no more than 3/4 of play. Now you want to check the overall condition to the left side of the engine compartment. Check all the hoses for leaks and for proper condition. Check all wires for proper condition and fasten properly. Check for proper coolant level. There's no leaks. Check that hoses are not leaking and in good condition. Now you want to check the oil levels. By doing this, you need to remove the dipstick, wipe it clean, insert it back in, then remove it. Now you want to check if the oil is above the refill mark and in safe operating range. Now you want to make sure that the air compressor is properly mounted and secured and not leaking. This is gear driven. Air lines are also securely mounted and not leaking. The power steering reservoir is filled to the proper level and it's not leaking. Steering gearbox is properly mounted and secured, not missing any nuts or bolts, not leaking. All connecting links, arms, and rods in the steering linkage are not worn or broken. Sockets and joints are not worn and loose. No missing nuts, bolts, or cotter pins. The spring mounts is not cracked or broken. No missing or damaged bushings. No missing or damaged hardware. The leaf springs not shifted, cracked, broken, or missing. The U-bolts are not broken, missing, or loose. The shock absorbers are properly mounted and secured and not leaking. The brake hose is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, worn, or frayed, not leaking. The brake chamber is also properly mounted and secured, not leaking, cracked, or dented, no loose or missing clamps. The slack adjuster and push rods are properly mounted and secured with a cotter pin, not bent, broken, or loose, no missing parts, and with the brakes release, should not have more than 1 inch of movement when pulled by hand. The brake linings are not worn dangerously thin. There's no contaminants such as oil and grease. The brake drums are not cracked, no dents, no holes, no contaminants such as oil and grease. Now we're going to check the inflation, the condition, and the depth of the tires. So we want to make sure that the tire is properly inflated, checking with the tire gauge. Next, we're going to check the condition of the tire, making sure that it's worn evenly. There's no cuts or damage to the treads or side walls, and the valve stem and cap are not broken or missing, and the depth of the tire is no less than 4/32 tread depth on the steer tires. The rim is not damaged or bent. There's no welds, no rust, or any powder trails indicating loose lug nut. The lug nuts are not missing, not loose, not cracked, no distortion. The hub oil axle seal is not leaking, and if there's a sight glass present, check oil is in proper levels. I'm going to do a separate video for the in-cab inspection. It'll be too long of a video for me to combine both the exterior and the in-cab inspection. A lot of people, at least in my class, when they fail the pre-trip, it's because of the in-cab inspection. A lot of critical failures in there. So I want to do that in a separate video. All right. So after this video, go check out that one. So next you want to check the door and the door hinge. You just want to make sure that the door is able to open and close properly, and the hinge and the seals are secured. Next, you want to check the fuel tank and the fuel caps. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not leaking. The fuel cap is tight and not damaged and also not leaking. Make sure to refer to this as fuel tank, not the gas tank. You will get points taken off. Now we're going to check the air lines, make sure it's properly mounted on both sides, not leaking, and no damage of any kind. Make sure it's not dragging on the tractor frame or catwalk. Take a look at the glad hands. Make sure they're locked in place, free of all damages. The seal is in good condition and not leaking. Or the electrical cord is also securely mounted on both sides, not frayed, not damaged, not dragging on the tractor frame or catwalk. Want to make sure the catwalk is properly mounted and secured, free from all debris, and it can hold your weight.
Now you want to make sure that the frame is not cracked, broken, or damaged. No illegal welds. The drive shaft is not bent, twisted, or cracked. The U-joints are secured and free from debris. At this point, you could say that you will inspect both axles the same way. The torque arms are secured and not damaged. The leaf spring is not shifted, cracked, or broken or missing. The U-bolts are not missing or broken or any loose bolts. The shock absorbers are securely mounted and not leaking. The upper and lower airbag mounts are secured and not damaged. The airbags themselves are not damaged and not leaking. Now you inspect both axles the same way. The brake hose is securely mounted, not cracked, worn, or frayed, and no leaks. Brake chamber is securely mounted and not leaking, not cracked or dented, and no loose or missing clamps. The slack adjuster and push rod is securely mounted with a cotter pin, not bent or broken or loose. There's no missing parts, and with the brakes released, it should not have no more than 1 inch of movement when pulled by hand. Brake linings are not worn dangerously thin, no contaminants such as oil and grease. The brake drum is not cracked or dense, no contaminants such as oil and grease. At this point, you'll just say, I will inspect both axles the same way. Next is to check the drive tires for proper inflation, checking with the tire gauge. Want to make sure it's worn evenly, no cuts or damage to the treads or sidewalls. The valve stem and caps are not missing, broken, or damaged. The depth is no less than 2 30-seconds tread depth on the drive tires. The rims are not damaged or bent, no welds, no rust, or any powder trails indicating loose lug nuts. You want to check that the lug nuts are not missing, loose, or cracked, or distorted. The hub oil axle seal is not leaking. If there is a sight glass present, check oil at the proper level. You want to make sure that the bud spacing is free of debris or roadkill, and the splash guards are not damaged and properly secured. And you want to check the tractor lights. Make sure that they're clean, not missing or broken, and are the right color. Red in the rear, amber everywhere else. Make sure that the reflectors are clean, not missing or broken, and right color. And you want to make sure that the DOT reflecting tape is present and affixed securely. Next, you want to check the fifth wheel skid plate, properly greased, securely mounted, not missing any hardware. Make sure there are no gaps between the apron and the fifth wheel skid plate. Now make sure that the locking jaw is secured around the shank of the kingpin. Now on the trailer, you want to make sure that the bulkhead or headboard is secured, not damaged, and able to hold freight. You want to make sure that the clearance lights are not missing or broken and are the right color. In this case, it will be amber. The reflectors, make sure they're clean as well, not missing or broken, also the right color. You want to check the overall condition to the side of the trailer, making sure there's no damage. You want to take a look at the DOT reflecting tape, make sure it's present and affixed securely. You want to make sure that the landing gear is fully raised. Obviously, I'm not connected to the trailer, so the landing gear is still fully extended. You want to make sure that the crank handle is properly secured, and you want to make sure that the landing pads are free from debris. Next, you want to check the side marker lights and the side reflectors. They're clean, not missing, not damaged, not broken. The right color, red in the rear, amber everywhere else. You want to check the sliding tandem locking pins are locked in place. The tandem release handle is also secured and locked in position. Now you want to check the inflation condition and depth to the trailer tire. Making sure they're properly inflated, checking with the tire gauge, worn evenly with no cuts or damage to the treads or sidewalls. The valve stem and caps are not missing or broken. The depth is no less than 2 30-seconds. The rims are not damaged or bent. No welds or rust. The lug nuts are not missing, loose, or cracked, or distorted. The hub oil axle seal is not leaking. If there's a sight glass present, make sure that the oil is at the proper level. And you want to check that the bud spacing is free from debris. Now you want to check the trailer suspension and the trailer brakes. Torque arms are secured, not damaged. The U-bolts are not broken or missing. The leaf springs are not shifted or cracked. The brake hose are securely mounted, not cracked, worn, or leaking. The brake chamber is securely mounted and not leaking. The slack adjuster and push rod is securely mounted with a cotter pin, not bent, broken, or loose. No missing parts. and with the brakes released, should not have more than 1 inch of movement when pulled by hand. The brake lining is not worn dangerously thin. No contaminants such as oil and grease. The brake drum is not cracked. No dents or holes. No contaminants such as oil and grease. The mud flaps are properly mounted and secured. If your trailer is equipped with an ABS marker light, make sure it's clean, not damaged or broken, and in the right color. At the rear of the trailer, you want to check all trailer lights. The left, the right, the four ways, the tail lights, the brake lights, the clearance lights, and the reflectors. They are clean, not missing or broken or damaged, and in the right color. It's red in the rear, amber everywhere else. You want to check the rear door and hinges. They're not damaged. It's able to open and close and latch properly. If it's a roll door, you want to make sure to check the metal wire. If it's a swing door, you want to make sure to take a look at all the hinges. Make sure to check the DOT reflective tape. Make sure it's clean and affixed and reflective to nature. Now, when it comes to the right side of the trailer, all you need to say is that you will check the right side of the trailer the same way as the left side of the trailer, with the exception of
the exhaust system. Connected tightly, mounted securely, and no loose clamps. You can check signs for any leaks and should not have any black soot.
And there you have it, guys. That is your pre-trip inspection. Make sure to just keep things very, very simple. Just indicate what it is you are seeing, because remember, the answers are right in front of you. And don't forget to check out the in-cab inspection. I'll leave that link in the description below. Take care. Good luck, guys.